Hey everyone, and welcome back to my Getting Started in World of Warcraft series. In the previous video, we went over what World of Warcraft is and how you can own the game and how subscriptions work. Well, in today's video, we're going to be covering starting World of Warcraft for the first time, selecting a realm, and creating a character, as well as a run through all of the game's classes. Now, there's a lot to cover in this video, so let's just get right into it. Okay, your account is ready. World of Warcraft is installed, so click that big play button and let's get started with World of Warcraft. You're going to be greeted by the gorgeous Battle for Azeroth cinematic, and once that's finished, the game will automatically log you in, which is one of the many great quality of life features from the Battle.net launcher. Now, if you're on a fresh account, then the first thing that you're going to see is realm selection. And this might be a bit confusing at first, but realm selection is very important, so let's learn about how it works. Now, each realm is a sort of copy of World of Warcraft. Players make characters on a realm, and when you play a character, you'll be on that realm. So if you have friends that play World of Warcraft, you'll want to select the same realm that they are on. Now, realm is just another name for server, which maybe is a more familiar word to some of you. Now, the content of World of Warcraft, of course, is identical across all realms, but realms are split into two types: normal and role-playing. So normal realms and RP realms are very similar, but they tend to have different communities and slightly different rule sets. Playing on a role-playing realm is all about immersion in the game, player-made events, and really playing World of Warcraft in the role of your character, almost as if you're playing a tabletop RPG and you're in character. Now, role-playing realms are subject to Blizzard's role-playing guidelines, which set out standard rules to support role-playing, such as making a character whose name fits within the Warcraft universe, and then being in character whenever you use public chat channels and maintaining generally a positive role-playing atmosphere. Normal realms do not have those expectations, and because of that, I think they're a good place for most players to start unless you are actively trying to seek out a role-playing experience in World of Warcraft. Now, if you're a returning player, you might notice something's a little bit strange. Realms are no longer marked as being player versus player or player versus environment. The way that it works now is that players manually opt into World PvP using a system called War Mode. This can be done on any server, and it removes the need for Blizzard having to have separate PvE and PvE servers. Now, I'm going to go into depth on what War Mode is later on. Now, realms used to be a lot more important in World of Warcraft's past. They still are quite important, but today many of the game features support playing with people who are not on your realm. As an example, if I was on Draenor EU, but I joined a party from Silvermoon EU, then my character would temporarily phase into Silvermoon, and then when I leave that party, I just go back to the Draenor version of the world. This pretty much means that you can play with anyone. That said, you can only join guilds who are on the same realm as you, so that's quite important. Now, later on, once you're in-game, you might notice characters running around with a realm name suffix on their character name. Now, this is because of a feature called cross-realm zones. This is an automatic thing, it's not something you'll ever have to think about, but the upshot of it is that Blizzard are able to keep the game's zones being populated with players by making a single zone contain players from multiple realms. So, now that you understand what a realm is, it's time to select one, and normally that I would recommend that people select a medium or high population realm, as that will have a more active community. Now, once you select a realm, you are going to be taken to the character creation screen, so let's talk about character creation in World of Warcraft. Okay, so it's time to create your first World of Warcraft character. Now, once you hit that big Create Character button, you are going to be presented with a menu on the left of your screen and a menu on the right. So, the menu on the left is going to allow you to select a race, what race you want your character to be. Now, World of Warcraft's races, broadly speaking, are divided into two factions, the Alliance and the Horde. It's important to know that they cannot play with each other, they can only play against each other, so if your friends are Alliance, you'll want to select Alliance. If your friends are Horde, you'll want to select Horde. And if you're going solo for the minute, then you pretty much just want to select whatever you think is the most cool. So the Alliance are comprised of humans, dwarves, gnomes, night elves, draenei, and worgen. And then the Horde are comprised of orcs, trolls, tauren, undead, blood elves, and goblins. And then finally, you'll see the Pandaren, who are neutral. This is because they get to choose between joining the Alliance or joining the Horde once they finish their starter zone. Now, Pandaren are the only race who get to choose their faction, so that's not a regular mechanic for most of the races. You'll probably also notice a button on the bottom left of the screen that says Allied Races. Now these are additional unlockable races that are earned through completing content, so feel free to check them out, but you are going to have to progress through the Legion expansion in order to make one, but I suppose that's a goal that you can actually just start working on once you get going in the game. Now in terms of choosing a race, really just choose whatever you think is cool, choose whatever you're drawn to. While they do have slightly different racial abilities, that is not massively important, and really with new players I always say you should just go with whatever speaks to you. Now once you select a race, you're going to have to choose between a male and a female character, and then you'll be customizing your character with various facial features and hairstyles and lots of other race specific options. So you've got your race and your character sorted out, but what about classes? Okay, so it's time to take a look at the right of the screen. Here we can see the various classes that are available. Now, each race can choose certain classes but can't choose others, and that is down to the fantasy and the lore. As an example, a Void Elf Death Knight would not make sense, as Death Knights were made before the events of Wrath of the Lich King, so canonically it would be a little bit nonsensical. So what is a class in World of Warcraft? Well, a class is a broad archetype of your character. They range from traditional fantasy archetypes like the Mage and the Warrior to more unique Warcraft ones like the Death Knight and the Demon Hunter. Each one provides a different fantasy and gameplay feel, and one thing that's worth noting is that Death Knights and Demon Hunters are what is called a hero class. They actually start off at a higher level, and therefore they cannot be created by new players. So Death Knights can be created once you have leveled a character to level 55, and Demon Hunters can be created once you've leveled a character to level 70. Now each class has 3 different specializations, with the exception of Demon Hunters who have 2 and Druids who have 4. Now your specialization sort of determines what role you fill and then what your style of gameplay is. And there are 3 broad roles in World of Warcraft: damage dealer, healer, and tank. Now most grouped content requires players of all roles to come together and work as a team, with tanks gathering up enemies and taking big hits for the rest of the team, damage dealers of course defeating enemies, and then healers keeping everyone alive. Now some classes in World of Warcraft fill multiple roles. As an example, paladins have retribution, which is a damage dealer, protection, which is a tank, and then holy, which is a healer. Then some other classes, like say the mage and the rogue, they have 3 specs that are all damage dealers of different varieties. So I'm just going to cover the core fantasy of every class, and on screen you're going to see their specs and the roles that they fill. Warriors embody the typical fantasy archetype of someone who's colossally powerful with just physical strength, being able to use that to smash their enemies to pieces or protect their allies. Paladins use a force called the Light, so they're big, strong, religious warriors who are able to use the light to empower their attacks, protect their allies, and heal their allies' wounds. Then Death Knights are undead, killed and then raised by the Lich King, but they've since broken free from his control. They can brutalize their enemies with frost, plague them up with unholy, or use blood to tank by sucking the life out of their enemies. Then Hunters are the classic ranger slash beastmaster sort of archetype, using a ranged weapon and sometimes their pet to defeat enemies, or if they want, go into survival spec, which is a close-up melee DPS spec. Then Shamans are all about channeling elemental energy to destroy their enemies and heal their friends, unleashing big surges of lava and lightning to kill things, or restorative waters to mend their allies' wounds. Then Monks were added in Mists of Pandaria as a new class, and they were martial artists who can physically beat their enemies to smithereens. They can channel healing mists to save their allies and stagger off damage with a variety of handy brews. Then Rogues are masters of stealth, subterfuge, and poisons. They're able to defeat their enemies in a variety of fiendish ways, or throw that all away and become a swashbuckling outlaw, complete with a hand pistol. Then Druids are shapeshifters who have a total of 4 different specs. They can use a variety of bleeds to savage enemies up close as a cat, use nature damage to defeat enemies at range as a moonkin, heal their allies with nature magic as restoration, or tank massive amounts of damage in bear form. Then Demon Hunters were introduced in Legion, and they're a fast-paced melee class that's able to tear into enemies with fell power as havoc, or shatter the souls out of their enemies to tank damage with the Vengeance spec. Then Priests are able to channel the Holy Light to keep their allies alive, using both the Holy and Discipline specializations, which have very different playstyles, or dip into destructive void magic to destroy their enemies as Shadow. Then Mages are the ultimate spellcaster, being able to channel pure arcane energy, dip into the elements of frost and fire to take out their enemies. Then Warlocks dip into the dark side of the World of Warcraft universe, using destructive fell magic to obliterate their enemies, to waste them away with diseases, or to summon in a small army of demons. So there you go, that's the classes of World of Warcraft. Feel free to make a few characters so that you can try them out, and it's worth knowing that specs are unlocked at level 10, and most races have a unique starting zone, so there's quite a lot of content you can explore there. Now, if you're a more experienced player and you want to get a taste of some of the higher level gameplay, then I would recommend making a class trial character. So you'll see that you can create a class trial or you can create a level 1 character. Now, class trials give you a glimpse at high level gameplay and they are great for testing things out. They do have some restrictions though, and the intent is that you test the spec out, and if you like it and want to play that character, you can apply a level 110 boost to it. Now, the level 110 boost will bring a character right up to level 110, it will give them a set of starting gear, and this is enough for you to jump straight into the latest content of World of Warcraft. Basically, you can get right into Battle for Azeroth stuff on the 14th of August, and you can journey right up to 120. Now, using the boost is pretty simple. You buy it from the store, you click the token, you select what character you want to boost, and then you apply the boost to that character. Now, the only other thing I think you need to know about all of this stuff is you can have 16 characters per realm and a total of 50 on your account. And then, as always, I want to leave you with a few tips before I take off. So, I think you should try making different races and classes to see the different starting zones and get a feel for the various different flavors of World of Warcraft gameplay. This will give you a good look at the game's factions and allow you to get a feel of what you want to do in World of Warcraft. And then, if you're playing with friends, I think you should perhaps think about fielding a tank and a healer spec between the two of you, because filling these roles as a duo is really good fun because they're all about working together to manage enemies and keeping the team alive. I just think that's a pretty fun way to go through the world with a friend. Now, if you're going to be going through multiple characters, then I recommend checking out ones with very different roles. So I'd recommend trying a tank, trying a healer, and then trying both a ranged and melee DPS. Doing this will give you a pretty broad sense of what you enjoy the most. And then even if you don't plan on buying a boost, then I think it's a good idea to make a class trial to see what a class is like at max level. This might be a little bit premature for players who are totally new to the genre, but for experienced players, I think it's pretty worthwhile to do. So there you go, that's all that I have to say on choosing a realm, creating a character, and all of that stuff. In next week's episode, we're going to hop in game and I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know to pretty much get started on the right foot. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.